Healthcare Association. We have our panel discussion sponsor, which is
Hey! Hey! The esteemed Donna Finley, Chairman of this event, would like to share some thoughts with you. Thank you so much. Madam Chair.
thank you. That's what I needed apparently. I'm going to start over. We want to thank our sponsors for this event because it is truly a blessing to have you sponsor and have all these people come out tonight. Our presenting sponsor is Texas Healthcare Association. Our panel discussion sponsor is Cheniere Energy. Our diamond sponsors is Alabama, Mashadi Tribe of Texas, BNSF Railroad, Kelly and Hart and Holman LLP, sponsoring attorney General Kim Paxton, Nacogdoches Medical, Nacogdoches Medical Center Health Network, Southern Power Company, the Nacogdoches Generating Facility, Tipton Ford Lincoln. Our platinum sponsors are AGC of Texas, Angelina and Nature's River Authority, Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Texas, Citizens First Bank, Direct Energy, East Texas Electric Cooperative, Inc., Energy, Nacogdoches Memorial Health, Encore Electric Delivery, Sabine River Authority of Texas, Stephen F. Austin State University, Superior Health Plan, Texas Bankers Association, Texas Medical Association. Code sponsors are CenturyLink, Chevron, E-Tech, Grasshopper Anesthesia Services, City of Nacogdoches, Nacogdoches Economic Development Corporation, NIPCO Incorporated, Sam Houston Electric Cooperative, Servpro of Lufkin and South Nacogdoches County, Stephen L. Boston State University Student Government Association, Southside Bank, Texas Forest Country Partnership, Texas Nursery and Landscape Association, Texas Oil and Gas Association, Insurance Agency, the Texas A&M University System, and TXQ Energy. The silver sponsors are Austin Bank, Texas, Nacogdoches, Urban Normal, Bancorp South, BXS Insurance, Castile and Roberts, Charles Poole Real Estate Inc., Ed Poole, Commercial Bank of Texas, Curtis and Clark Energy Services, Farmers Insurance, Grace Handler Agency, Lehman Eye Center, Manpower Group, Office Pride of East Texas, R&K Distributors Inc., Regions Bank, Roger Van Horn, Brockle Insurance and Financial Group, State Farm Insurance, Ted Smith, and TFP Nutrition. Thank you all for your sponsorships. They have gone a long way. We appreciate it. At this time, I would like to introduce the chair of the chamber. President of the chamber, excuse me, Wayne Mitchell.
Thank you, Donna, very much. I've got to tell you, to execute an event like this, I've got to tell you, you have to have great staff and committee leadership. And Donna and Jerry Jones have done an unbelievable job helping coordinate this. Ladies and gentlemen, would you recognize them for all the hard work they've put in? It is my pleasure to greet you. I have the privilege of serving as President and CEO of the Chamber of Commerce here in Nacogdoches County. I want to welcome all of our guests here today. I had a little note on my agenda to introduce VIPs in this room, but at the risk to save my job, I'm going to resist the urge to do that. Because in this room tonight, we have pleased every woman and man in this room is a VIP in our opinion, and we're thrilled to have you a part of this program. We want to welcome you to Nacogdoches County and to East Texas, those of you that are visitors for the first time. We promise that tomorrow's lineup of programs and panelists are going to be extraordinary. You're going to have a breakfast keynote with the Honorable Jeff Mosley, the CEO of the Texas Association of Business, who's here with us tonight. At lunch, we'll have a keynote by the Honorable Governor Greg Abbott. And then I'm pleased to say that Attorney General Kim Paxton, who's also with us tonight, will be speaking in the early afternoon, along with his extraordinary panel. So I would like to call forward my board chair, Scott Waller, to say hello on behalf of the board of directors. Scott? Yes? You can clap for him, it's okay.
Thank you so much, Wayne. And on behalf of the Board of Directors and on behalf of the members of the Nacogdoches County Chamber of Commerce and on behalf of every citizen of Nacogdoches County, I want to welcome you. We hope you have a fantastic time in the oldest town in Texas, the garden capital of Texas. And I'm going to ask you a favor. I'd like to see a show of hands. If you have come here from out of town, would you raise your hand? We just want to welcome you to Nacogdoches. If you're here from out of town, thank you so much. We hope you have a great time.
It's now my privilege to introduce the Honorable State Senator. Would you welcome with me one of our co-hosts here tonight, Senator Robert Nichols. Well, there he is. Go ahead, Senator.
I'm sorry. It's been great having Representative Clardy and working with the Chamber, have all of y'all here. I also want to thank the sponsors, but so many of y'all came here from a long ways off. We are very thankful that the members of the Senate and members of the House have come all together, and it's going to be a great evening. So, Senator Representative Clardy.
Robert, thank you, Senator. All right, well, great to have you on here, gentlemen, ladies. If y'all look up here, if there's any member of the Texas House of Representatives, members, King, Springer, Ashby, Ironmack, Schofield, if you're a member of the House of Representatives of the state of Texas, would you please join me in the front? Just stand up here with me for a moment. Because, you know, I'm not the kind of person that likes to give anybody a bad time. It's just not my nature. But I feel like if I get all the House members up here, because, you know, last time we did this, the Lone Star legislation, we do it every other year, out of session years, and I got a call from the Honorable Senator Robert Nichols. And he told me, he said, Clardy, I got 7 senators coming, and everybody knows that 1 senator's worth 5 representatives. Well, you know, I'm sitting here looking, and I've got some other folks coming in tomorrow. Here they're creeping up here slowly but surely, and there's more that are on their way. They are en route. But you know, a house divided cannot stand. And in the Texas House of Representatives, we are proud to stand together, Republicans, Democrats, north, south, east, or west. And we got a great crew here. I hope you'll take the opportunity to identify these guys. If you've got any pet legislation you want to talk about, something you're interested in, talk to these guys. These are really hard workers. They can make it happen. So, but I wanted them to come up here and join me and to welcome them to East Texas and Nacogdoches. Some of them are from East Texas, but Darby came in from West Texas. The guys from West Texas, thank you for the win. We didn't really order that, but thank you for bringing that with you. Well, we got a good crew here, but let's start the festivities tonight. So, all right, that's enough of you guys. Go sit down. I will say this, though. You may notice on our badges, at the bottom it says Speaker. If you see anybody that scribbled in Mr. in front of Speaker, would you point those out to me, please? Thank you very much. But in the meantime, you guys go sit down and let's get the show going. So, with that, let's get ready to rumble! I've always wanted to do that. So if we can get the stage set for our Media Madness portion of the program. Do we have, who's pulling the curtain back? I'm going to introduce these guys. Why don't you sit down until I call your name. These guys in the media, they don't follow instructions very well. You know, the bad thing about introducing the media is, no matter what I say, it's probably going to come back and get me. But that's the price of hope. So I'm going to introduce first, because he's at the top of the page, Mr. Jay Leeson. Jay Leeson, come on down. Jay is from my old hometown of Lubbock, Texas. He lives actually from Abernathy, a suburb of Lubbock. He puts a show on called The Other Side of Texas. He's a well-known purveyor of prairie populism. He's a well-known writer, author and political columnist and commentator, so I'm looking forward to seeing what he's going to do. Let me explain though, as Jay gets seated, and he's always the slowest one, that the format on this is the media guys will sit here and talk about what's going on in politics. The name of the subject is the polarization of politics in Texas. What's going on with our politics and why has it gotten so nasty? By the way, if you live in Nacogdoches, if you receive those mailers, for the record, I really do like babies and old people. Just want you to know that. Do not believe everything you read. So, but these guys are going to tell us what they see is going on from a different point of view. Normally they talk bad about us behind the safety of a keyboard. Tonight they're going to do it from the stage in front of us. So Jay Leeson is our first member. After that, we've got Erica Grieder. Erica, I've not seen Erica yet. Erica, please tell me you're here. Ah, there she is. Erica, you may be very familiar with her name. She's a well-known columnist, written many articles, was formerly the senior editor of Texas Monthly Magazine, joined the Houston Chronicle, and continues to write. Very prolific political commentator and very knowledgeable. Very glad that she could join us because really the rest of these are going to be much more guys, and I'm glad we got Erica. Next up, Chris Perkins. Now Chris is different than the other folks on the panel. Chris is a pollster. He is a technical analyst of political data to get a feel for what's going on in the state of Texas and how to run campaigns. I actually employed Chris as my pollster in my campaigns because I know Chris will not, he won't cut corners. He is invested for the best technology and the best science. And he has a dartboard, he has a Ouija board, he has tarot cards, and a box of dominoes. And now he brings them all to bear, does great work. Chris, glad you're here with us. His company's called Ragnar. If you spell that backwards, it's Rangar. I'm still not sure why it's that, but it is. But we love having Chris here. He's a veteran, was here with us last time. Next up, Jay Root. Jay Root, also a veteran from the previous last time around. Jay is with the Texas Tribune, does a lot of investigative journalism, covers some major stories both this side and the other side of the border. Jay is a native of Liberty, Texas. Quick story about Jay. He grew up in East Texas. We had an event last time. We got out there, we were shooting some guns. I'm not going to name the Senator Larry Taylor, who could not hit the target, but Jay Root one time, and I think what that meant was, growing up in Liberty, Jay had shot at many things at midnight with success. I'm not, some people call it poaching. I think Jay calls it hunting. All right, next up, Scott Braddock. Where are you, Scott? Scott, this dapper gentleman, is serving a double role. He is our veteran from last time. He's going to be on the panel of Media Madness, but he also is going to be our internal moderator. Rather than having somebody up here like holding court trying to control these guys, we're just going to let them fight it out among themselves. But Scott is the premier voice with the Quorum Report. He's a Texas-based commentator, and he's covered many, many issues. A prolific writer, and a very good, quick insight and wit about political activity in Texas. Last but certainly not least, Brandon Darby. Where are you, Brandon? All right, come up this side. I was going to give that time about jeans, but half of you wearing jeans, so he looks good. Brandon is from Pasadena, Texas, kind of around the Houston area, down in the Gulf Channel. But he now lives in Lubbock. I don't know why all good things come out of Lubbock. They can't figure it out. But he is with Breitbart, Texas, as their managing director. Breitbart, Texas is a well-known name. Andrew Breitbart was the founder, very conservative organization. And what we tried to do with this is get a spectrum of political thought in Texas. And I think that's certainly represented here. He's been in a number of interviews on a lot of things. You can find him on the web. He has an interesting background, which he may or may not talk about, and he may or may not be able to talk about, because then he can tell you about it, but then if he told you, he'd have to kill you. So, Brandon, I'm going to let you you tell us more about yourself as you feel necessary. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to very reluctantly yield the floor. I'll be seeing more of you in the future, but I want to also extend my thank you for all of you being here. Bars in the back, food's in the front. It's going to be a great week in Nacogdoches. Thank you, Axel, and welcome to Nacogdoches. Take it away, Scott. around and get there.
Thank you, Speaker Clardy, I appreciate it. By the way, when the Republican caucus met at the end of, come on down everybody, let's have fun, it's a weekend in Nacogdoches. Yep. Great.
Hey, if I could, folks there in the back, steer them this way, let's move up forward. You are not gonna wanna miss a minute of this, so we need to quit talking. Boo-boo, get up here. Malone, let's go. Don't make me come back there. All right, I'm gonna start shooting this way, but please take a seat, let's move forward. This is a great program. Oh, look, the price is just in the front. I'm telling you, the price is right. Come up here on the front row. Front row, front row.
Now that we have your attention, we'll address the technical difficulties and it'll be right. When the Republican caucus met last year to talk about how they would endorse a speaker candidate, I'm told that all the members were walking around calling each other Mr. Speaker, except for one who was Madam Speaker. Let's see. These mics working? Maybe? Maybe? No, might have to just pass this one, which is okay. I can walk and talk. It's all good. So, you know, Travis says, you know, come on down to East Texas. It's always a good time. Come to, it's always a good time. And it is. And we're going to talk about media madness, divided revolt. I thought we might just call it fake news film. Well, we've got Breitbart and Quorum Report on the same stage. We're all accused of it every day, right? And you said, well, you don't get accused of fake news as much, do you? Raise your hand if you've been accused of being fake news. Okay, well, of course, only the pollster would not raise his hand. That's so, look, we're going to talk legislative stuff. We'll get into the whole bill. And at the end of this, I'll make a shameless plug for all of you that subscribe to Grieder. First, though, we have to start with the national scene, right? Because it informs everything about politics, you know, what's going on. By the way, the president may tweet something before we're done speaking that changes everything we're about to say. So don't take notes or anything. But let's, since we're using this one mic, let's just start here on the stand. As someone who supported President Trump, quite, you know, Breitbart right on the front, how do you think it's going? I mean, I'm asking that very broadly, very clearly.
It's great to be here. With President Trump, how do I think it's going? Well, first off, I supported Trump because I felt like, as much as his message on the border was imperfect to me, I was glad that someone was at least acknowledging that there was suffering, that there were heinous things happening in some areas of the border. I don't feel like it's going that well when it comes to the border. No, I don't. I don't feel like a lot is happening. I know that, you know, in the last week there's news that the National Guard are going to the border. I know that there's news that the wall construction has begun. But really the wall construction hasn't begun. And the National Guard on the border thing, it's a situation I have a lot of mixed feelings about. So, how is it going? Am I glad that Hillary's the president? Do I wish that things were handled very differently? Do I wish that we appealed to different themes and people to inspire them to do something about the border rather than fear? I do. So, yeah, I'm fairly critical of him. I don't attack him all the time. I think that he does deserve some criticism, but the interesting thing is that we exist in a context where if you criticize him and you're anti-Trump, and if you defend him on something, like I did recently, he made a statement and he said that 80% of the people coming here from Central America are sexually assaulted along the way, the females and the girls. If he meant that as far as the caravan everyone was talking about, well, that would not be true. But if he meant it as far as the majority of women who come from Central America sexually assaulted on the way, that's actually factually correct. So I defended him on that. So the context that we operate within, though, and I think everyone up on on the stage can relate to me. We're attacked every day because if you're just factual, you know, there are two sides who are very vocal on the extremes, and they don't appreciate facts if the facts don't, if they don't mesh with what they want to be true.
So Erica, you were the opposite, right? You were very much against Trump, never Trump. Is that fair? But yes, sort of never Trump, more of the founding of the Cruz group. But I mean, in your estimation, how is it? Not just on the border, but broadly, what does all this mean for where we're headed? Because nothing seems to be working all the way to everything.
And Eric, before you go, the good news is we have a second mic that works now. So I'm going to get one over here to Braddock. Not yet, I'm still talking. But really, if you always check your lapel mics, look in the little box, make sure the green thing's showing because they tested it twice, 3 times today. But look at the green light, okay? Well,
It's a government operation.
we're working on our technology. Okay.
I did 15 years in radio. The only thing I learned was the on button is very important. The off button is even more important. So yeah, on that point, I mean, everything's different. It's totally scrambled. It's up, it's down, everything. Yeah, you're good.
Right, anyway, so thank you all for having us here. It's great to see you all, and always good to talk to this group. I really can't tell how it's going. I look at national news, and I'm just like, what are they even talking about right now? Like, on the drive up here, I was driving to Houston, and I was kind of thinking about the latest, and that's why these are not I just, for me, I don't think it's going well. That doesn't really excel. But I mean, the reason I was so anti-Trump in the first place is like, I feel like what we're seeing in the national stage isn't actually new for us in Texas. I mean, sort of, the dynamic in the election and primary I was covering, I yelled at both Brandon and Jay quite a few times during the course of the primary, was that it seemed like the kind of year where it was going to be either a Cruz or a Trump election. Everyone, you know, and so when I covered Texas primaries before, I was just felt like Trump was the nomination unless Cruz therefore stopped. And I wasn't successful in convincing everybody to vote for Cruz instead. I'm sorry. But as a result, I mean, I honestly don't know. I really can't tell. People seem like every day is like DEFCON 1. They're super upset. They come like, do you see what just happened? They're shocked. And I can never tell the magnitude of like the latest scandal from DC.
With so much noise, I mean, at some point people tune the stuff out. Jay Leeson, you were on Mr. Darby's side in this argument, and you were mainly focused on the border. I know that you care about that also, Jay. But why, we're in rural Texas now, you're from the other side of Texas. Tell me about why you felt that way and what your argument was.
Well, thank you, Chamber. Thank you, Representative Clardy, Senator Nichols, for the opportunity to be here. And I'm more than humbled to sit here on the stage with these folks. You know,
stop running for state representative. And what my question was.
I addressed that in a monologue
Brandon wanted
recently.
me to say that. Brandon wanted me to say that.
So, my concern with where I live, and I'm going to talk about place politics as we go throughout the evening. My concern with where I live was economics and agriculture in particular. And whenever we walked into this last election, cotton, which makes up the region in which I live, around Lubbock, cotton is a $5 billion annual economic impact. And cotton was in a bad way. And my belief was that in an America First, without that tinging into white nationalism or nationalism at all, but in an America First economic policy, that Trump could address these economic issues across, from cotton over to the pine, curtain, and timber. And that was a concern for me, and Trump very explicitly addressed those concerns in the economy, that he was going to run policy. Now, to the question about being disappointed with, well, let me point something out first. It is mind-boggling to me how we look at our state policy, how we look at state politics through a national lens. And the more we continue to do that, the more we'll begin to lose Texas. We need to focus on our regions. Members vote your districts. Texas vote Texas, and then we'll go out from there. But everything is upside down right now in politics. I'll begin with this. The whole Stormy Daniels thing. You probably didn't think I was bringing that up, but the whole, like,
I knew you were going to bring that up.
Like back
if anyone was going to bring it up, it was going to be you.
in the late 90s, that was a problem, right? And so now you've got this reversal where, no, it's not a problem. Both sides are hypocritical to where we were some 20 years ago at this point. You have a Republican president running a tariff war. The same president who said that he was going to stand for agriculture. I took 5 calls this morning from people in West Texas who are concerned, agriculture industry people, who are concerned about what we're about to get into. That's typically a Democratic issue, that we will face those kinds of tariffs and that sort of economic peril. But even if I may say, in this room right now, I hear this argument from Republicans, and it's mind-blowing to me. I'm only 39 years old. But we are going to use the power of the state. The state only decides that cities and counties exist. Like, if Pete Laney would have said that whenever I was growing up, everybody, or if Barack Obama came into Texas and said that, everybody's minds would be blown. But we've got leading Republicans in Texas right now saying that. And everybody's like, whoa, you're okay. Well, no, it's not okay. So, to the question about Trump, and I'll pass on here. I'm really disappointed that the libertarian conservatives who he upset, the Heritage Foundation, the Cato Institute, the very people that he said he was going to allow, that he was going to run against and his administration would fight against, are now running his economic policy. And as someone who speaks to rural interests, that's a problem.
I agree with so much of what Jay just said, and it was actually kind of, I think that you were the person when we were arguing about Trump versus Cruz, it was painful. So, I think you're brilliant, I know you, you're a friend, your integrity is, I don't question it. So, and you had you made a good case, but I think that essentially where we differed, and probably why now you feel like things are upside down and you're upset, and I'm actually less disappointed, I think, for you with how things are going so far, is because I was thinking about it as like, what is the worst case scenario? And the worst case scenario would be Trump's not actually going to do any of this stuff. He's going to tell you he's going to care about the border and about farmers and about trade and raise the rate. Like, he doesn't mean it. He's not going to work tirelessly for his district, which is the United States. And so that might have been wrong, but thus far it hasn't seemed to be wrong. So you're disappointed, whereas I'm like, well, at least we haven't had it for long. But there's still time. And
so, Mr. Root, you've been covering politics in the state for a long time. I'm going to come to Chris last because he's going to get into numbers. All of the passion you just heard from Jay, Chris is the photo negative of that, just numbers. Jay, I mean, you and I have covered politics in the state a long time. It is very difficult. You have people at the top who are conservative, Greg Abbott, Lieutenant Governor Patrick. First word out of their mouths a lot of times is, I agree with President Trump, who is somebody in the primary was able to say to primary voters, I think Planned Parenthood does a lot of good things to Republican primary voters. So he's scrambling things. How is it different now, as you say?
Well, Trump changed everything, let's be honest with it about it. But let me say that if we're going to talk about polarization, let me say, and it's about the media, let me say one thing about the media, which is that I think we in the media are under a lot of pressure to be opinionated and to take sides, and there's a lot of talk about normalization, that we're normalizing Trump. And I really am a contrarian on this point of view, because I think that it has never been more important than now for us in the media to remain objective and to not take debate on Twitter, to not get into some kind of Twitter war. And so let me just start by saying that. I do think that we're in an extremely polarized environment, and Trump, has some of the blame for this. Both sides have a lot of blame. But let me talk about the border issue that Brandon Darby started with. And so in 2015, I was asked to become a full-time investigative reporter, and Emily Ramshaw, my editor, said, I want you to come up with something that the whole team, an investigative team, could work on. I was like, God, what am I going to do? And a couple of days later, I turn on the TV, and there's Donald Trump announcing for president with Mexico in the crosshairs. And I came back, I said, the border. And so I spent about 18 months looking at the border, and we did a series called Bordering on Insecurity. And one of the things that I discovered is that there is no issue that is more polarizing. And one of the reasons is there are so many lies that are being told. And there are so many things that we don't really understand because we're not getting good information. I mean, just a couple of days ago, I was reading a story about this caravan. Everybody's heard about this caravan of Central Americans. It's made its way through Mexico, and Donald Trump talked about it and all of that. And they had a guy on there, they quoted a guy who said that the Mexicans were very welcoming to Central American migrants. And I have to tell you that that is not my experience. I followed a Central American immigrant from Piedras Negras, from deeper in up to Piedras Negras, and he wanted to get to Eagle Pass. He decided not to turn himself in. He was going to do it. He decided not to. The trail of tears from the southern border of Mexico with Guatemala to our border is something to behold. And so this is something that, Mexico is not being held accountable. I heard another thing that stood out to me as one of this misinformation, and it was the governor of Arizona talking about how this National Guard is going to help because we have to stop all of these drugs that are flowing across our border and are causing our opioid crisis. Guess what? Most of the drugs come across in legitimate cargo. They don't come across our river. They don't go across the border in Arizona. They got meth, liquid meth, and Sprite cans. So one of the big problems we have that's contributing to polarization is, and it ties into the whole debate about fake news, is that people are not getting good information. I mean, a wall, think about that for a second, okay? Maybe you're for the border wall, maybe you're against it. Let me just give you a little hint here. It's not going to stop illegal drug trafficking. It will have a little bit of an impact, and I don't know how big of an impact, but it will have some impact on human trafficking for sure. But drugs are easy to conceal. They come in the mail, they shoot them over in catapults, they come on boats, they go in tunnels. I mean, and the other thing, and I'll finish with this, I hear a lot about the rule of law on the border, that the lack of rule of law on the border, and there's no question about it. Brandon, you can say that too, but you know what one of the most lawless places in Texas is, and in America, and that's the Texas workplace, okay? So I'll know when we're getting serious on border security, when we get serious on who's hiring undocumented immigrants and making them work for 70 and 80 hours a week without overtime. Get serious about that, then I'll know, because that's a lot of contributors who don't want that to happen. That's when I'll know we're serious about border security and immigration.
That was the unopinionated journalist. So, Chris, on the numbers, I mean, a lot about border security, other issues that have come up in Texas. We have a lot of members here. There are some House members and Senate members. They're hearing about this border security stuff. They passed a ban on sanctuary cities. It seemed to me as I was traveling around the state, and just to give people some context, covering the Republican primary, over 2 weeks I'd be like in Galveston, Houston, Corpus Christi, Dallas, Fort Worth, Amarillo, and then Wichita Falls, and Atlanta, Texas, which I had never even heard of, which is out here. and then back in Austin. And I don't remember anybody saying, man, thank God they banned sanctuary cities. I don't remember people talking much about a bathroom bill or any of this stuff. What are the things resonating with the voters out there as you see it?
So regardless of district, state, voter, Republican, Democrat, liberal, conservative, moderate, the number one issue by far in every district, in every state, in every region is immigration and border security. And that, that's something that, we're going to have to deal with at the state level, but also at the federal level. I think the original question was, how's Trump doing to the national effect? So a lot of the federal issues lead over to the state issues, and it's something that as a state or local or county official, you're going to have to deal with as a candidate or official. But as the one partisan up here, I'll talk about the more national perspective. So how is it going for Trump? I mean, I look at the numbers. The numbers are his job approval is upside down. The generic ballot is towards the Democratic candidate. Now, we can argue about, what does that mean? His approval rating is never good. The generic ballot's always kind of an interesting issue. And I think Trump is a little bit of an indirect piece of the larger picture, which is the Republican brand. And that's the part that concerns me as a partisan. So, for the past 6 to 8 years, the party on the national perspective has really baked in an issue, one specific issue that we won a lot of races with, is getting rid of Obamacare. Getting rid of Obamacare, repealing Obamacare, whatever it is, the Obamacare plan is terrible. If you elect us, we're going to get rid of it. So, for a long time, for at least 3 election cycles, so 6+ years, we've really put in that issue that we're going to, if you elect us, we are going to make this, we're going to fix healthcare. Yes, the very first, however many days, the very first year that we have a Republican Senate, a Republican House, and a Republican President, we can't fix it. And I think that is, forget Trump for a second, forget the personality, forget the tweets. I don't know that any of that's actually going to stop. But there is also the what have you done for me lately piece that is feeding down the overall party brand. I mean, this was something that we spent a long time pushing. You put us in the House and the Senate with a president that cares about the issue, and we're going to get it done, and we couldn't get it done. Now, I know there's nuances, not enough votes, the Senate, 60 votes, et cetera, et cetera. I get all that. But from
You mean campaigns and governing are different?
Yeah, how about that?
Yeah.
Yeah, campaigns and governing different. So that is my larger picture concern on the national perspective. Okay, Trump is an indirect cause. But I don't know, I mean, I think the root of the cause is more of a Republican brand, which worries me because of the fact that the single issue that every single voter in the nation associated with, more or less, the National Republican Party, we stuck it to them and said, here's what we're going to do, and we couldn't get it done. So, until we can fix that, I mean, tax reform is good, there's some other things that could be done at the federal level that'll be good, but I don't know how much repair we're going to be able to get done unless we can get the healthcare system at the national and fixed. And that unfortunately bleeds down to the state. I mean, whether it's Texas, whether it's Louisiana, whether it's Oregon, Alaska, Montana. I mean, there is so much of the federal side that will bleed down. We can talk about the state issues in a little bit.
One follow-up to that, which is when the lieutenant governor sets the tone for the Republican primary, the first words out of his mouth in his first ad are, I agree with President Trump, and then whatever else happens. On that would happen to be the word. But that is the winning message with Republican voters right now, isn't it? In this state, is that true?
Well, there is, yeah. What I was speaking about was general election voters.
Sure,
now,
yeah.
we're going to talk about Republican primary voters.
Well, we'll tell the future in a minute, but what we just went through is a lot of people trying to emulate somebody who has created so much chaos.
And Republican primary voters have a very strong, favorable opinion of the president. I do find it very interesting in some of the polls that I'm conducting statewide. It's interesting where if you ask a Republican primary voter, do you approve or disapprove of the job that Donald Trump is doing as president? you're going to get in the 75 to 85% approval range. Now, if I ask the same person, do you consider your views closer to those of the traditional Republican Party or closer to those of Donald Trump? I found about a 30 to 40 point drop off from Donald Trump. So even though the Republican primary voters approve of the way the president's doing their job, they don't necessarily consider their views directly aligned. They just like the way they're doing his job performance is going. And that becomes the trick. I mean, do you go hold hands with the president, knowing that on a Republican standpoint, primaries are over, but on the primary standpoint, he is popular among Republicans, even though there's less than 50% that feel like their views are aligned. They just feel like he's doing a good job for all kinds of different reasons.
For whatever it is that he's doing. Erica, do you think that the president setting the tone in that way, that it doesn't necessarily matter what the policy positions are, they just like the guy? Where does that take us as a state when they're trying to set policy at the state level?
It's interesting data, and I'm not surprised by it. I don't know if you were surprised by it or find it surprising, but in my experience, people in general, voters in every individual of human beings, like and respect honesty, integrity, candor, and so in a sense, I think what's insulating Trump is that, certainly in his campaign, he had this whole sort of businessman and corruptible kind of thing, and because he hadn't run promise before, it was like a non-falsifiable premise. So Trump saying, no one can buy me, I keep being manipulated, I'll do the right thing, I'll take bold action. People believed that he was authentically, they believed that. Even though, as you pointed out earlier, he said a variety of things in the campaign trail. Trump's really, I don't see Trump as being ideological or policy oriented. He's a business background, he's from New York, and he's actually started the party before. Really, the only policy issue he's been consistent on since the 80s is being against NAFTA. That's the way I was raised. That is not a Republican traditional point of view. I thought we were all pro NAFTA, and apparently we're not. So I think that for Republicans, I think Chris's advice is good. Republicans probably need more. They usually do advice. But Republicans should be worried about the brand of the party, because the brand of the party as it stands is full of people who have shown a lack of integrity to enough voters that they're going to find it hard to retain that.
I think you took some issue, or maybe take some issue with what Mr. Root had to say about the border, but on the issue of what Trump promised he would do on that, it hasn't happened. To Erica's point, people just kind of like, if they like Trump, they just like him because of the way he's talking. I heard him describe as sort of a sleazy salesman from New York, Manhattan. People are buying what he's selling. I think the comment was made in the election by a few people, maybe including yourself, that he's not really going to build a wall. That's not really going to happen. I didn't think they were doing that. Do you think that people thought that their concerns were being taken seriously, and maybe they didn't really care what the end result of that would be? They just liked that somebody is speaking with what they're worried about?
Yeah, so this panel has been very interesting. Actually, with Jay Root, I agree with everything you said.
Okay, I disagree.
No, I did. My reaction. So here's the situation. Right? Out of everyone on the stage, I'm Breitbart. Okay, so I'm the person. If you're a Republican and you do something stupid, I would defend you and fight the left for you. And even as I learn more, as I see more, as I have more understanding, I'm at a point where I'm getting really close to giving up on the Republican Party myself. And I'm Breitbart. That's bad. That's really bad, because a lot of what's been touched upon on this stage tonight is actually true. With the Central American migrant caravan that was coming, there's caravans that come all the time. It's just BuzzFeed did a sensational article. Breitbart actually covered it very straight, and actually got a lot of media coverage. They were surprised. Yeah.
I just want to interrupt Brandon here to explain that Brandon's managing editor of Breitbart, Texas. So he has a staff of Texas-based journalists, including Alfonso Ortiz. So I'm not sure if people know this, but I know this from being Brandon's friend. You want to come first?
I was Andrew's friend, so I'm given a lot of leeway, right? So I started covering, I came into Texas, I'm from here, I've lived here my whole life, but we started Breitbart, Texas. We hired Michael Prince Sullivan. We took out Dan Branch. We were like, rah, rah. Well, then the problem was is I started to learn a lot more and listen to a lot more people, right? So I moved to West Texas to be close to my daughter. And when I moved to West Texas and I started to, as I was going around the state talking at every tea party in the state, I even got awards from Joanne Fleming, for my fight for liberty. And well, my point is this though.
Some of y'all did too, didn't you?
Some of y'all did, you don't now. But here's the deal. So I started going to all these rural communities and talking to people, and I started going, wait a minute. The largest employer in these communities is the public school system and the agricultural interests. And then the political leaders in the Republican Party talking about the free market, like they think, it's almost like they think the Holy Spirit inspired Ayn Rand, or something. And they talk about the free market, but the truth is none of our farmers in the rural communities actually exist in a free market. They're competing alone against the government of China. They're competing alone against foreign interests where the governments get involved completely well. And then we talk about vouchers, and I used to be we even hired writers just to write about vouchers. We're going to take out corrupt public schools.
I'm sure you mean school choice.
Well, okay.
Is that what I was told?
So what I realized,
I was told Empower Texans would be here. I was told maybe the Texas Public Policy Foundation would be here. I do believe, and if they are here, don't. If any of the
I'm not
Empower,
trying to be rude.
well, if any of the Empower writers are here, you can't have the alcohol because they're all 12 years old. My deal is on vouchers. Why did you start out writing about that and promoting it? Because I'd like to dig down on why you stopped.
Okay, well, because the issue got really simple. So, like I said, I just started to learn more. When it came to the border, I was like, build the wall, build the wall. Well, then I started to learn, and we became one of the leading outlets for border coverage. Nobody can say, even left or right, say, oh, you guys do horrible cartel coverage or border area coverage. I can't really say that because we don't. We do good stuff. And we have the most insight because we're there the most, and we have the most resources to sign. But when you learn more, you go, wait a minute. The president said we're going to build the wall to stop the opium crisis, but the majority of opium comes across ports of entry.
Brandon, I love you.
We've
talked a lot about the border, and this is the most border-centric. This is the most border-centric answer to a voucher question.
Okay,
so you started. People were starting writing about school choice. They were promoting that. Why did you come off of that? What turned the tide for you?
But it's the same concept behind both issues, what I was trying to explain. The concept is that we have these things we hold dear as Republicans or on the right in Texas, but when you really dig into it, we're all mostly full of it. Most of our political leaders in the state are full of it. It's like that caravan. It's the same thing, and I'll get there. But the caravan, those people were coming legally. The migrant, trust me, they're coming legally. They were invited, Mexico allowed them to come in. They're coming to our border to ask for asylum, which they have the legal right to do. That's a feature of our law, it's not a loophole. But we covered it, most people on the right, and the Republicans covered it as illegal aliens coming, we're going to send the guard with the border. And what we're doing as a Republican Party is we're getting people to be mad at the migrants who are trying to come here and work, instead of mad at all of you lawmakers and the national lawmakers who don't change the law for political reasons because they don't want to expend the political capital. And that's the same thing with the voucher deal. You end up in a situation where you have 10 to 12, maybe 20, if you're lucky, predominantly white suburban counties who benefit from something. And say that if you support public schools or, and I'm not going to knock Kevin Williamson, but he wrote an article where he basically said if you're
in the National Review.
In the National Review. What he said was, he basically said, like, if you're a low-income white rural community, you're probably, basically, a lot of you are drug addicted and you just need to die and get luggage and move to the city. You need to move. And that's when you get to this extreme argument about the free market, to where there's not the balance in a free market, a pursuit of a free market with the realization that we're all members of a place, of a community. We're all members of a nation, of a city, of a county. And that same thing holds true. Like if you feel that way and you blindly follow that free market and don't consider anything else, then you don't care if 244 Texas counties go broke and get ruined, so that these predominantly these 10 to 20 Texas counties can have vouchers for their children. I homeschool. I'm that guy. I'm that guy who homeschools. I'm pretty libertarian, really. I want to see medicinal marijuana. I don't say this publicly, but if I go to Colorado where it's legal, sometimes I smoke.
Oh, you're saying it now.
And I go dancing. I go 80s dancing and stuff. I know, I got you. But my point is like with the vouchers, it's the same situation. It's like it's gotten into this everyone's head that they have to support it. A couple of billionaires want you to support it. And if you don't support those vouchers, and if you don't deceive people and say school choice and vouchers are the same issue when they're really not, if you don't kiss that billionaire's ring, then they're going to put mailers in your mailbox that are very dishonest, you know? They're going to say that you're open borders and support abortion, you want to throw old people off of cliffs. And so that's the situation we got into. And I'm just going to tell you, if I'm Breitbart, and at the point that I'm feeling this way, there's probably a whole lot of Texans that are getting fed up with the extremity and the polarization on the right, where everyone has to vote against their own district's interests to appease a couple of billionaires.
Yeah, Jay Leeson, school choice and school vouchers were mentioned. The Texas House of Representatives, when voting on school finance last year, 1.8 billion additional into public schools. There's a supermajority of support for that in the Texas House, 100 votes. When it comes to banning money for vouchers and using public dollars for that, there's a supermajority against vouchers. The elections did not change that at all. But as Brandon mentioned, did not change that at all, and in fact it may get worse for vouchers in November. But since that is the driving force for these folks who are spending so much money in our elections, I don't expect them to stop talking about this. I've been talking with people at the Capitol who have been doing Texas politics for 40, 45 years, and they say, you know, that issue always takes care of itself. Because nobody really supports it. They just say they do because they'll take the dollars from these people. But it is sort of a spiritual calling for these folks. There's no ROI there's no return on investment for Jim Lyon to be putting money into vouchers, or for the Wilkes brothers, or for Tim Dunn, really. There are other people who can make money from vouchers, some suggested. But with them, it really is like putting money in the collection plate. They just expect it's going to something good. So it's never going to stop, right? So how do folks in rural Texas fight back against that?
Well, I'll say that whenever we begin this forum and we talk about national issues, I cringe at that because I think we spend way too much time focusing on national issues and not our streets, and not our neighborhoods, not our county roads, not our counties. And I want to say this, a place wherever you're coming here from, to the NAC, a place carries a continuity of knowledge, and it passes that knowledge from generation to generation. And I mean from your 6th generation ancestors on down. It passes a knowledge of how that place works, what makes it turn. And when there's a disruption in that knowledge, learning, risk, loss, or outright decline and failure. And that's the place from which I speak in rural Texas. That we are at a point in state government where we are willing to take ventures that are absolutely contrary to our history, and I would argue incompatible with our future for a lot of rural places. And vouchers at the top of the list. Now, we talk about the polarization. I would argue to you, and Eric and I have had these more than several talks about this offline. The disconnect, I believe, in state politics and in local politics is that we look at everything through a national lens, and we don't look at it through the lens of what makes our place work and what has made it work. And so, Scott, to your question, I promise you the Lieutenant Governor is about to start beating the drum about the question, the proposition that was on the ballot. that I believe came back at 90%, that parents should have the right. Because they look at it through a national lens and say in the polling box, hey, that seems like a good idea. Just like the other 20 ideas, because they had geniuses writing those proposals. But it's going to continue to be an issue, but I would argue that the more people begin to look at policy through their place, wherever they are from in Texas. Jeff Leach and I have great conversations about suburban interests and rural interests. But whenever we all look at it through the lens, and that's been the dynamic of Texas politics, from Rayburn to Laney to Strauss, has been to look at it through the lens of place. But if we continue to look at it through the national lens, then we'll risk losing places in Texas. And I expect this voucher argument to continue simply based on the returns from the primary election and the answers to that question at 90%.
As far as the money, Jay's been digging into this stuff, Mr. Root has. And with these groups, with the money, with these groups in the elections, I mean, you see where these contributions are coming from, where they're going to. Talk about that and give people some context.
Well, you know, I think we all know and love Charlie Guerin, but let's be honest, Charlie Guerin, the chairman of the House Administration Committee, is sort of the poster child for the entrenched incumbent, right? I mean, he was the Major Strauss lieutenant. Well, the major conservative group, Empower Texans, put hundreds of thousands of dollars in the effort to defeat Charlie Guerin, and they came up empty-handed. Empower Texans, and I would argue, and I did argue in an article, that Empower Texans and Greg Abbott both had kind of a bad night in terms of trying to defeat people, incumbents. Empower Texans had 16 people on their hit list, and they took out 2 of them, although one of them, Wayne Faircloth, I think it's easy to say, Mace Middleton, multimillionaire, spent a lot of his own money.
More than $1 million of his own money.
Right. And also,
by the way, toward the end of that
Jason
election,
Viala had some issues as well.
Well, that's true. By the end of that election, for those of you who were not in Galveston, Mace Middleton was running against Faircloth. The signs in the district across Galveston County and Chambers County, when the governor endorsed Mace Middleton, the signs said endorsed by Governor Abbott. 2 days before Election Day, they said endorsed by teachers. Catch them? But there were no. That was to the surprise of education. But on the point about the governor, I mean, you've been watching him. You covered Perry as well. What do you make of? We'll go through everybody here for state leadership. What do you think about where the governor is going into the next legislative session? We still, of course, have the November election to get through. But I think for a lot of the Republican members, and I'll see if any of them nod their heads when I say this, it seems that there's no shelter in the storm when it comes to dealing with him. In 2015, he told you all that he'd be with you in 2016 if you supported him on what? Pre-K, that's right. And he was nowhere to be found. And then in this last session, he decided to punish members who were against him basically on his fundraising, right? The members who had said that he shouldn't be able to raise money or as much money from his appointments to boards and commissions.
Lyle Larson,
Sarah Davis, and Faircloth had made those comments. So it's hard to figure it out. On the one hand, you could say members should be afraid of him because he can drop so much money. This is a guy with a mountain of money. You don't want to be on the other side of the guy who has $15 million in the bank. And it's just not worth the aggravation. On the other hand, you could say, well, he can spend a ton of money against me, and I'll beat his candidate anyway. I mean, how do you read that?
Well, I'm glad you put it that way, because that's exactly the issue that I wrestled with as well. I mean, I've heard it both ways. I've heard the governor's people, the people that support the governor, say that they sent a clear message that if you buck me, you're going to get this. And you know, no politician wants to ever get primary. They hate that. Okay? I mean, there's 2 ways to run: scared and unopposed, right? I mean, that's the old adage. And so I just would tend to think that that would be the message that a Republican candidate would take away from this, right? But you know, I mean, hell hath no fury, will have no fury in this next legislature, like Lyle Larson and Sarah Davis. I mean, they may get stripped. I don't know who's going to be speaker. You know, you don't know who's going to be speaker. We're not going to know that until November, until shortly after the election. But they're going to be free. I mean, they already are. You already see that. Sarah Davis has already taken a lot of pop shots, whether it's on HHSC. You know, there are a lot of, I don't know, maybe you've noticed there's been some issues in some of these agencies. And, you know, right now she's on General Investigating and Ethics, so she has a great platform right now, at least until this interim is out, to, you know, carry through with that. So I would tend to think that it emboldens people who are not already in good graces with the governor, which would include the Democrats and people like Sarah Davis and Lyle Larson. But if you're a Republican, the governor is still a very big deal. Look, the governor will have veto power and always will, and nobody wants their bills to get vetoed.
Right. Chris, going into November, how is the landscape different? I mean, you know, we actually have some general election contests we're actually looking at in Texas. What? Why is that?
Well, I mean, a lot of it is demographics. I mean, there is always going to be a situation where we generally know where at least from the Democratic perspective, where the opportunities are, where they can beat incumbents. I mean, House has a large majority, Senate has a large majority, so they're naturally more Republican, so they're going to have a little bit more offensive opportunities in November. This time around, I mean, going back, as Jay, what you were saying right there, is the national politics. A lot of the national politics will, in this case, unfortunately, drive the elections. Now, the plus side, from a Texas perspective, is we have a really good success story to tell. Republicans are in control of the House, control of the Senate, they're in control of the state, and we have growth, jobs, opportunity. I mean, we are a national success story, and that is essentially what the brand and the campaigning should be from just the Republican perspective. We are doing good things for the state. We do not have an economic problem like, say, Illinois does, who are leading the state. We do not have a situation like Michigan or California, where they have high taxes, high costs of living. They are getting out. I mean, we are, you know, we are a national example of good government and growth. And I think I'll talk primary just real quick. I think that is one of the reasons why it's difficult. You see, as you guys were talking about, the umpteen millions of dollars spent against the 51 incumbents that were challenged, and they got 3 of them. And that's because it gets difficult to suggest that the incumbent legislator or congressman or whatever it is not doing his or her job, so you should throw this person out. And at the same time, on the other side, talk about what a great success story Texas is. Business, jobs, opportunity, all of the good things that has made Texas over the last decade. And that becomes a difficult proposition to throw out Republican incumbents in a Republican primary. We're going to experience the same situation at the general election, with a little bit different of a flavor. National politics will drive a lot of the overall mood. So this becomes a situation where campaigns are important. I mean, we as Republicans, a lot of you and me on the stage, we have a really good story to tell about Texas and all of the good things that we're going to do and have been doing and can be done, but it's a scenario where how much of the national Democratic so-called wave leads down at this legislative level. That is, thankfully, we've got 7 months to figure that out. Doesn't have to be figured out tomorrow.
Yeah, all right. Well, Jay, I know that probably, Mr. Leeson, really disappoints you. By the way, we're going to wrap up just after 7:30 here, but everyone will get the last shot at it. You are very frustrated by that it is colored by the national scene, but that's the reality. So how do you deal with it, other than being angry with it? I heard that part. I heard that you don't like it.
I know you took a gig at me in the beginning. about running for state rep. And I did consider doing that. I considered doing it twice. But as I considered it the last time,
Travis means don't move to Nacogdoches. He's,
I've been on his patio. I think he may be unbeatable. But the last time I did it, something clicked in my mind about the opportunity to begin to inform locals about what's going on, and what's going on in regions, and what's going on in counties. And there's a huge chasm right now in Texas where there aren't people doing that. And matter of fact, I'm just a simple guy from Abernathy, and I got on the radio and started talking about prairie populism, about a brand of republicanism, a brand of democratic politics that can work where we live. And that's gained some traction, to which I am humble. But I think it becomes incumbent upon state representatives, especially state representatives that are going to go against the Senate, that they're going to go against in the next legislature, to grab people into their offices and tell them what's going on, especially state representatives who don't have much to lose, who are willing to lose, and tell them what's going on, grab people in media, hey, this is what's going on. And I think that can begin to change the local, if I may say, political imagination from the myth, the national myth of what's going on in Hale County, or what's going on in Lynn County, or what's going on in Nacogdoches County. I think that there's a huge opportunity for a lot of people to begin to talk about how policy will actually impact their place. For members, vote your district, but media speak to your district. And especially with, like, I'm in Lubbock, and Gatehouse Media just bought out the Lubbock Avalanche Journal, Amarillo Globe. I'm sure Ford Price can tell you what it looks like when your local newspaper falls in demise, whenever there's only one local reporter that's there. How do you then, and with the lies and the smears, and I can give 2 bits, censor myself, who's here, because there are representatives of entities that spread lies all throughout the Panhandle and lost their monies, may I say, to Panhandle conservatives. But what happens whenever those lies are out there and there's onslaughts of money from who knows where going into districts, and you only have one reporter at your newspaper? There's a huge opportunity for people to fill in those gaps. And I think that, and I mean monetarily and otherwise. And I'm glad to talk with anybody who wants to figure out how to do that.
Well, that's why we put so many miles on our trucks, right? Yes, sir. So, Erica, looking forward into the future, optimistic, totally depressed. Where are you at?
Well, in the future, I see, I'm wondering if you guys see this too. I see Scott Braddock running for Texas House in his district, and then becoming speaker because he's spent the past 10, 20 years colluding across the state, meeting all the reps. Working.
Jay's the one who does that openly.
Are you guys not worried? He would roll the speaker race, I think.
Thank you.
Yeah, to him? Come on. No,
I do not see that, but
I'm amused by it. I think it's been a great discussion, and I feel like everyone here is being vastly more articulate than I am, which is usually the case anyway, but especially at night because I'm really tired. But I am in a good mood. You guys are not in a good mood. You guys are fed up and angry, and anxious, and you should be anxious about the prospects if you're running for office, honestly. But I'm feeling pretty good because Texans being fed up, Texans wanting their representatives who work for them to do their job. That's what's going to compel them to action. That's why Empower Texans attack us, and why they got so bad. You're a good representative, and you will in a primary job, which happens over and over and over. Also, I would like to say that Governor Abbott attacked Lyle Larson because I tricked him into it. And I tricked him by going on Twitter and saying, why is Governor Abbott attacking Sarah Davis and not Lyle Larson? It was really effective. So if Abbott's trying to bully you, I would say, don't worry about it. Just easily tricked.
Easily tricked, she says.
No, it's on Twitter. I just like search my Twitter and be like Eric Grieder, Larson, because Larson was like making fun of Abbott, and Davis was just disagreeing with policy. Because Davis like supported the tree ordinance that was supposed to use it.
Toward the future, Brandon, what do you think?
Toward the future in Texas. Well, what I hope is that a lot of the leaders who, like Thor and others who survived like really extremist knee-jerk efforts to take them out, I hope that they more formally organize themselves into a political bloc with the right messaging and pushing to challenge some of what I think is knee-jerk in Texas. You know, that I'm very frustrated with Republicans, but the only reason I can't go over to the Democrats is because some of them have gone so far out to the left. You know, it's not a party full of ponchos, right? Tavares. It's like some of these guys are so far out to the left. I can't go there either. But I do think ultimately, you know, if Republicans don't stop voting for the greater good and they don't start voting for their districts, I think what's going to happen is, you know, all it's going to take is a moderate Democrat, and if that moderate Democrat can get through, we're going to lose a whole bunch of Republicans in the state of Texas.
Yeah, it's possible. I would end on one final thought, because this is a legislative summit. There are a lot of legislators here. My text messages and emails have blown up, especially since the primary. With people saying, who is going to be the next speaker? To Erica's point, not me. So you look at the results. 1.5 million Republicans voted, 1 million Democrats. Numbers are high, record numbers. And national media has a tendency to only look at the partisanship and then move on. They were looking for this blue wave, and it crashes into a red wall in Texas, so we're done with the story. But what they miss is the real story, which is guys like Jay Leeson, Erica Grieder, Brandon Darby, Jay Rue telling the truth in his stories. Chris, you're just doing the numbers, just don't worry about it. But then education groups and business groups telling people vote, and do what? Vote in the Republican primary. People did that. So at the top of the ticket, Governor Abbott didn't really have opposition, neither did Cruz, neither did Paxton, neither did others. Nobody did. But all those people voting in the Republican primary in the state, they sent a message to the people in Texas House. We've talked about the fact the incumbents held their own. They said you're doing a good job. And we just got through a session where the House asserted its independence in a way that maybe it hasn't had to do what the voters said, stay independent. People ask me all the time, this is what my text message is blowing up, who's going to be the speaker? I don't know, but if the members choose a speaker that bows down and always goes along to get along, if they choose that, it won't be because that's what voters told them. I want a big hand for this panel. Thanks to everybody. Thanks for having us here, Travis. Y'all enjoy the rest of the night.
Thank you, Scott. Let's give this panel a big round of applause. Thank you all for being here. Wonderful job. Wish we could keep going all night, and we will, just under different circumstances. This will conclude the official part of the program. So if you would, I want to thank a few folks here specifically. Where is our owner of our hotel? Richard DeWitt, you still in the room? Richard, Barbara DeWitt, are you here? Where are you? Well, I'm going to thank them for hosting this, but I'm also going to thank Senator Nichols, the members of the Senate, members of the House, because you are standing in the only facility in Texas that has been redone under the hotel occupancy tax bill that we passed in the 84th legislature. That was a big part of what we did, so thank you, members, for helping this a reality, and I know the DeWitts appreciate your support, too. I want to thank our friends from SFA. You may notice we've had signage. I asked her to do this one-handed. She's that good. But they're going to be here throughout the program. We're going to have sign language interpreters for us. Hopefully we're going to have a little better technical support tomorrow with the microphones. But tomorrow we're going to kick off at 7:15. Sign in. We're going to move from the hotel to the university, Stephen F. Austin State University, just up North Street. And we're going to start off at 7:15. Jeff Mosley is the executive director of the Texas Association of Business. Jeff, you here still? Wave at me if you are. Yeah, he must have gone to the bar too. And so, but Jeff will be here in the morning. We're going to start at 7:15, kick that off for our breakfast. Then we're going to have several panels on education, on health care, revisiting history. Governor Abbott has been talked about a lot tonight. And hopefully he will be here tomorrow because Governor Abbott is going to have an opportunity to speak. Lord willing, and the high winds don't get us, and he's able to fly in. He's had to cancel, I think, Trent, 3 events here for reasons that were, explainable and understandable. But he really needs to be here tomorrow. He's going to speak at noon, so maybe he can answer some of these tough questions our friends from the Fifth Estate have lobbed his way. And so that'll be at noon. General Paxton, you in the back? Yeah. General Paxton, he's here. I saw him a while ago. He's in the house. He's going to be here with us tonight. But General Paxton's going to speak to us tomorrow afternoon at 2:30. Talk about the state of legal affairs in Texas. That's going to be a strong panel. And we're going to wrap up tomorrow afternoon. But tonight, I want to thank all of you so much. Nacogdoches members of the Chamber of Commerce, would you please stand or raise your hand if you remember the Nacogdoches Chamber? Because I know Senator Nichols and I get a lot of credit for putting this on, and he and I both know it's our staffs, but more than that, it's the Nacogdoches Chamber and it's the Stephen Foster State University team that pulled together to make this thing happen. I think it's a great event. I'm so pleased to see all of you here. Look forward to being with you tomorrow. Let's start off bright and early with breakfast, but we're about to open some doors. We've got some, there will be beverages served throughout the evening, and hope you will stay with us, hang out with us, have a good time. Welcome to Nacogdoches, Axe and Jacks. Thank you, and good night.